You see, ever since they killed Patrice Lumumba in 1961, Congo has never known peace. They've had three wars now. The first war was in 1996. It lasted for 1 year till 1997. And in that war, over 200 to 300 people were unalived and hundreds of thousands were displaced. The Second Congo War was even more serious. In fact, it was so serious that they called it the Great War of Africa. It started in 1998, lasted for 5 years, up till 2003. And in that war, over 3 million people were displaced. And guess the number of people that were unalived? About 6 million people were unalived. That's the deadliest war Africa has ever fought, amongst themselves. Now there's a war currently going on in Congo, and hundreds of thousands of people unalived. Our ancestors say that if you do not know where or when the rain began to beat you, you will not know when it stopped. Congo brutally unalived the best thing that happened to them, which is Patrice Lumumba. You see, when he became their prime minister in 1960 after independence, when he became their prime minister, he did two things. The first was to unify or to attempt to unify Congo. And the second thing he did, which cost him his life, was his attempt to push out the colonists, the Westerners, the imperialists, from the looting of their country's resources, which he insisted must be used or channeled to the use of only the Congolese. And that was what he was pushing for. Colonists, imperialists, we want you out of our country, out of our land, and Congo's resources, we want it to be used only for the Congolese. But guess what? The people he was attempting to push out didn't find that funny. I mean, they have been so used to the exploitation of the resources of this country that they were not going to go out without a fight. So what did they do? Of course, in every 12 there must be a Judas. They looked for the cracks around Patrice Lumumba, which you'll find very easily all over Africa. Politicians. Politicians are Africa's greatest problem. You see, Africa's politicians, they are our problem. They are the people keeping Africa the way it is. For some reason, there's a special breed of people who become politicians in Africa. And this breed of people, they are selfish, self centered, tribalistic, and greedy. All they think about is themselves. They do not think about the people. It's just them, their families, and their cronies. So these colonists, these imperialists, easily found politicians all over Congo that would do what they wanted. So they began to sponsor dissent all over the country, especially in the areas where the minerals were in East Congo. They convinced the Katanga region, where they were stealing resources from, they convinced the leaders there, the politicians that came from that area, to not only protest, but to demand for a new country. In other words, demand to secede. You see how cunning these people are. They are stealing from this part of the country. They are stealing from the eastern part of the country. And they tell these people that they are stealing from, hey, you guys tell these people you don't want to be part of this country anymore. Tell them you have resources, you have to keep it to yourself. You don't need these other people. You have the resources. So they began to move to secede from the country. It was in order to quell these secession moves, in order to quell the rebellion, that Patrice Lumumba was captured, heinously unalived, brutally unalived. He was so hated by these new colonialists that they conspired, the Belgians, the CIA of America, the French, allegedly came together and unalived him. And They so hated him that they put his body in acid. They didn't want him buried. They didn't want anybody to see his body because they figured that if the people saw Patrice Lumumba's body, there might be an uprising. So they dissolved his body in acid and kept only two of his teeth as symbols of this man. Two of his teeth, which they even took to Belgium and they returned them just a few years back. You see, when you unalive a man whose hands are clean, even the gods will fight for him. It's once your hands are clean, anybody who does evil to you will meet the wrath of the gods. It's the gods that will fight for you. And Patrice Lumumba's hands were clean. So I'm thinking that these politicians in Congo, for them to have peace, because ever since 1960, they've not had peace. Even Mobutu, who ruled them for donkey years before he died, was only ruling part of the country. There were so many areas he was not in control of, but he was content with being, friends of France and Belgium who were supporting him and allowed him to stay in power, and of course, join them in the looting of the country's resources. So Congo has to atone for their sins. They have to go and appease this man, just like Ibrahim Traore did with Thomas Sankara. He had to go and appease him, do a statue in his honor, celebrate him, and you can see what's happening in Burkina Faso. The ghost of Patrice Lumumba will continue to haunt Congo until they do the right thing. It's only then that they will begin to see clearly what or how they are being deceived by all these people that are in the country and pilfering their resources. That's it.